Okay. We are here at Jack's Restaurant inside the Pink Shell Beach Resort, Fort Myers Beach. And I'll tell you this, it's beautiful. It always has been beautiful. I can tell you many times I've been here for a lot of different reasons, whether it was weddings and events in this very room where I'm sitting right now, or whether it was spending time with family and visiting the beach and during the holidays, everybody 15, 20 strong, getting a couple of rooms here and being on the beach and great memories that we have here in this very location and many other places that, listen, it's one thing that, that as we look on the year now, anniversary a year ago, where Hurricane Ian hit Southwest Florida and some of the memories that we're reflecting on today, one thing is for sure, and, look, it's not cliche. I'm not saying this for any other reason other than it's true. You make new memories. It's a new day. After today, we talk a little bit about what happened, and then, look, we move forward. We get things done here on Fort Myers Beach and Pine Island and Sanibel and all the other places that still are not whole, and you make new memories, and you come to the beach, and you start here and other places, great locations that are going to be open soon, and so much is going to be happening. And look, it's different, but it is certainly something that the community has come together all across Southwest Florida, and you knew that they would. And some of the amazing things and stories that we've been able to talk about this morning. I believe we've got him. Congressman Byron Donald is joining us on Daybreak, 92.5 Fox News, our usual Thursday visit. He's been quite the busy man, so we always appreciate him stopping by. First of all, good morning, sir. How are you?
Morning, Drew. How are you?
I'm well. This morning we're talking a little bit about the year. It's hard to believe it's already been a year. Hurricane Ian hitting Southwest Florida. And maybe before we talk about some other things that obviously we want to talk about what's happening on Capitol Hill, maybe a reflection on some of the things that you remember about what was going on and the community reaching out to you and some of the things that were happening at the time when Ian hit Southwest Florida.
I mean, look, the biggest thing that I always keep in my memory is the fighting spirit of everybody to build back after the storm passed. And really, the way everybody it was just a can-do spirit. Still is, by the way, but it was a can-do spirit. It was the mindset of, yeah, this was really bad, and we took a ton of damage, stuff that nobody ever anticipated we were going to take, but it happened. But there wasn't just a defeatism amongst the people of Southwest Florida. It was, okay, this happened. Let's go ahead and build back. I remember specifically when I was out on Fort Myers Beach, and there were still families who were in their homes. They stayed through the storm. They were in their homes. They didn't want to leave. There was this, back and forth decisions with local government about, well, maybe we need to have people leave, and they just didn't want to look. They didn't want to go. They were doing the work to try to rehab their homes as best they could. They were still living in them, starting to clean out, trying to find a way back. And I think that kind of mindset, that type of focus and fortitude, man, that's one of the reasons we built back as much as we built back, even though we still have a long way to go.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that I've talked about, and no disrespect to people that are in Washington, D.C. at all, or maybe even in Tallahassee, but the fact of the matter is it's a time like a hurricane, the way it hit Southwest Florida, where you truly do see community getting it done. I mean, there is something to be said about the feds and what has to be done, and there's something to be said about the state response and what they were able to do here to make things happen quickly. But the fact of the matter is that it always comes down. It always comes down to local, and the local level and the community, and how when things get done and you want things to get done, that's when the community comes together, and that's when it gets done. Not waiting for somebody to swoop in to help, but certainly the community doing what only they can do.
No, that's 100%. And that's really where people were. I mean, we had nonprofit groups that were just coming in saying, what can we do? Where can we help? Triaging neighborhoods, triaging homes.
Yeah.
I was in a mobile home park, and you had just citizens, people from local churches going to these mobile home parks This one was actually down in Naples, which people would say, well, Fort Myers Beach was ground zero. It was. But you have these creek beds that were filling up into the back of these mobile home parks.
Yep.
And, you get 3 or 4 feet of water through there. The floor in these old mobile homes is basically being ripped out.
Yeah.
And it's just dissolving in front of people's eyes. You had elderly people, nowhere else to go. They were still living in there. So you have members of the faith community, nonprofits coming into these mobile home parks, and they're just basically like, all right, what do you need? We have to move you out. Can we get you to another place? Is there a way to save this? Is there a way to restore electricity? What kind of food do you need? It was happening all through Southwest Florida.
Right.
That kind of that togetherness of let's just get it done. We'll worry about outside forces later. It's totally needed.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like in politics, when you look at some of the way things play out. And, I brought up the example to somebody here. We're at the Pink Shell Beach Resort inside Jack's Restaurant on Fort Myers Beach today on the 1-year anniversary of Hurricane Ian. And one of the things that I brought up to the people, to someone that was here is, the doing it yourself, not in the community level, not waiting, for example, for the federal response, that will come, hopefully, but ultimately, the community comes first. It's kind of like the same way in business where somebody would say, the federal government has to be involved in anything and everything, even when it comes to like the minimum wage and certain businesses and the things that they're going to have to demand be paid. And then you'll see certain businesses that will pay that minimum wage or will pay a fantastic wage. And it's not because a government entity made them do it, but it's because they put themselves in the position to be able to do something like that. A government didn't have to come along and do it. It worked itself out that way, to which when you are fiscally responsible and you're doing the right thing, that you can put yourself in a position to do something like that. I know it's kind of sort of a stretch to go from one to the other, but I'm only bringing that up because oftentimes, people forget, as we just discussed, about how important the local level is. So I just wanted to bring that point up before we kind of move on to some other things that are going on. And let's bring up some of the things that are happening in D.C. Congressman Byron Donalds joining us on Daybreak 92.5 Fox News. Looking at a video right now that's on C-SPAN of people rushing up to you and asking questions about the CR and some of the border security proposals that are put out there and some of what you had to say. And let's just put it this way. Some people were putting it as dropping a truth bomb about Senate spending. And I want you to describe what that conversation was like. What's going on?
Oh, this must have been yesterday.
Yep.
Yesterday morning.
Yep.
I mean, look, the Senate wants to send over a clean CR with another $6.2 billion for Ukraine in a supplemental, some disaster recovery funds, and send that to the House and say, okay, this is our position for keeping the government open. And I told the press, I'm like, that thing's dead on arrival. And they were like, well, how could you say it? 77 senators agreed. And I threw a Chad Parker from Fox. I said, and 77 senators are wrong. Sending $6.2 billion to Ukraine is not what we need to do to keep our government running. To keep our government running, it needs to do its job, which is, number one, securing the nation's border. That is the primary function of the federal government, is to secure the border and secure its people, and it is failing. It's not even a thing where we can have a debate on, oh, they're doing it or maybe they're not. No. There's no debate here. It is an abject failure. So my position, Drew, for months has been, why would we fund a government that doesn't do its primary job?
Yeah.
That makes no sense. And the Senate, to the 77 senators who agreed to this, you're not paying attention to what's going on in the country. They're concerned about how do we keep the machine of Washington going. And that's just a non-starter for me.
Yeah.
And look, I know people at home have said, but Byron, you have you put out a continuing resolution. I did. And what it did was it cut 8% off the top. Again, 8% cut in spending. That's never occurred in Washington, not since World War II. And it forces the Biden administration to actually secure the border with real policy writers that change the policy provisions at the southern border and in the interior of the United States. That's what it would do. Does the Senate want to do that? No. I know they don't want to do that, but but I can't worry about the Senate. I can only worry about what
Right.
the right thing to do is for the American people.
Right.
I think in that process, are we going through appropriation bills? We are. We were actually on the floor last night voting till 12:30 in the morning. There were members still on the floor last night to 2 a.m. Going over amendment provisions that we're going to vote on today. I'm not saying that to be like, oh my gosh, we're working so hard. I'm saying that to the American people, like, this is what was happening as we speak. Frankly, we should have done this work 2 months ago. But we are where we are, and we're doing everything we can to get it done right now.
Yeah, I think, you bring up a point that I think is so important, and it's this, that there are certain senators who are just not close with their constituents, that are disconnected.
Yeah.
I hate to put it that way, but they are. They're just disconnected. And they're so, I don't know what happens. I don't know if it's D.C. Maybe it's just the way the Senate is as compared to the House, and the connection to the people and the community, and the importance of that connection. When you're as disconnected as some of these senators are, that's the concern. The concern becomes, it doesn't make a difference if there's an R after your name. It doesn't make a difference what they say. How are you voting? What are you doing? Who are you siding with? And when you are looking at the constituents, who are the people in the state, are you truly doing what it is that they are asking? And to have so many disconnected is concerning. Do you see what I'm saying?
Oh, listen, Drew. Let's have a constitutional moment for a second.
Let's do that.
The framers of the Constitution, when the Constitution was written and ratified, senators were not directly elected by people in the state.
That's right.
They were actually sent to the federal government by the state legislature. And the reason why, in the original construction of the Constitution, that the senators were representing state government was because they wanted the senators to represent the interests of the state government. When Woodrow Wilson, who is probably the first real progressive, radical president the country's ever had, he's the one that put in the amendment, the 17th Amendment, that was signed into law, that allowed for the direct election of senators. Now, people will say, well, Byron, don't you believe in democracy? I do. But we are a representative republic. The House of Representatives is the body that is supposed to represent the people. The Senate, in the original construction of the Constitution, was supposed to represent state governments. Fast forward to today. If you have states like Texas, like New York, like Arizona, like New Mexico, like Illinois, and their state budgets are being blown up because of the president's radical decision on the southern border, don't you think those senators will be tied directly to what the legislature is saying about border security? Or would they be tied to quasi-popular will, which never really gets reviewed for 6 years? And this is the problem in the Senate.
Yeah.
The senators are so removed from the political process because they're not up for election, only but every 6 years. So they are not making decisions in the interest of the people who sent them, because by and large, they're not going to have to deal with the will of the people for 4 more years, or for some of them, 6 more years. So their attitude is, well, I'm going to stick with my party because that's the thing that keeps me in power, as opposed to actually doing the things for the state that they represent.
Yeah.
Before Woodrow Wilson passed the 17th Amendment, if a senator wasn't abiding by the will of the state legislature was removing senators. That has happened in American history up until the 17th Amendment. They would get pulled back by the legislature. They're like, man, this Drew Steele guy is not doing a job. He needs to come home, and we got to send somebody else. That's how the Senate used to operate before the 17th Amendment. My view is the worst amendment that ever passed. We can have that discussion. People will probably want to blow this up and use my words against me in the future. I don't care, because I'm just telling you the truth.
I'm going to be a senator one day? Is this like is that what you're suggesting?
You're going to be a senator one day, Drew Steele.
Senator
news, everybody.
Senator Steele. I don't like the way it turns out, because I got kicked out. That's horrible. But I got to work on that part of it. Congressman Byron Donalds joining us on Daybreak 92.5 Fox News. Hey, before we go, a couple of other things.
Yeah.
The two things that people here on Fort Myers Beach were mentioning to me, and the broader picture of some of the rebuilding and some of what's happening on Fort Myers Beach and some of the issues of what's getting done and not getting done, and the regulatory issues that constantly pop up, even on a local level, when it comes to some of the things that have to happen in order to move forward, whether it is getting permits and the like, and on a local level, regulatory issues, but on a federal level. Some of the other things that we need to focus on, too, when it comes to monies being spent and the like. And, people are worried about how we're going to get back to that place. How are we going to have some regulatory policy in D.C. that's going to help with financially, which is what's going on with inflation and the like, and in order to get to that place? I mean, is that something that's being talked about? Is anybody talking about regulatory policy at all there on a federal level?
Yeah, we are. But look, the only way you're going to, I think, really move that is you have to, frankly, change funding trajectories, and you have to start winning the political argument on this stuff. And that sounds, really like I'm putting it off on somebody else, but
no, serious.
This town does not want to change, Drew. Right. They don't want to change. And so you have to create these leverage points which give you an opportunity to make these adjustments. I think right now in the House, our leverage is diminishing to make these changes because, we have a couple of different key positions amongst House Republicans, and the Senate Republicans and Senate Democrats, they're in agreement. They don't want to see changes. They just want to fund the government, and they just want to wait for the next election. It's a terrible place we are, but that's where we are.
Yeah.
And so House Republicans, frankly, we got to get it together because we're not on the same page. There's a bunch of backdoor issues that are not hitting the news cycles that people aren't seeing. This is all in the weeds, inside baseball stuff, but it's causing us real problems right now in a time where we got to be unified. In order to have the leverage to cut spending in our government, to get the inflation under control, to make those regulatory changes to unleash our economy, and to put a downward trajectory on food prices and energy prices.
Yeah, and the reason why I bring that up before we go, and I know you got to jump, but before we go, and the reason why I'm bringing this up is because and I know that's what has to happen. But going back to the debate on senators, and just because you have an R after your name, I'm sorry, certainly, they also have to be on that same page. You can't have people that are there in D.C. that are up for the status quo and just continue doing this that they have to agree with. And if they don't, then we have to find people that are in D.C. that understand the ramifications of where we are when it comes to spending and some of the things that we've talked about for far too long. I mean, it's numbing to people. I could say $33 trillion all I want. It's numbing to people. They don't even know what that looks like. They can't comprehend the numbers until all of a sudden it's at their front door. And it hasn't been at their front door enough yet for a majority of people to care. And then, unfortunately, you have some people who are in D.C. who feel the same way.
Well, I'll tell you a quick piece. We were doing amendment votes on the agriculture bill. So there were amendments filed by some of my colleagues that were cutting pieces of the ag bill. And so some of my colleagues in the House would say, well, why are you worried about the ag bill? Our real problem is mandatory spending. And so I've heard this argument time and time again. So last night, these amendments are being voted on. And you would get 120 votes for, 150 votes for, 180 votes for, and the rest will be against, which means all the Democrats are all opposed to all of it, and you have Republicans opposed to it. So I was talking to one of the members who's a more moderate member in our conference, and he goes, Byron, why are we voting for these amendments? They're not going to pass anyway. The Senate will never take it. And I said, if you want to touch mandatory spending, but you can't even cut $50 million out of the Department of Agriculture, you don't understand what it's going to take to deal with mandatory spending.
Yeah, no doubt.
That's the problem we got to fix up here.
Yeah. Congressman Byron Donald is joining us on Daybreak 92.5 Fox News. All right, my friend. I appreciate you. We'll see you next week. All the best. Thanks so much.
See you, Drew.
All right. It is Daybreak live from Fort Myers Beach, Jack's Restaurant inside the Pink Shell Beach Resort. It's Daybreak 92.5 Fox News. Coming up, the top 5 audio clips of the day next. It's Daybreak 92.5 Fox News right all along.